Hi and welcome to another episode of Home Coffee Brewing with April. So I'm still in Hong Kong and we're getting ready for that second video, and it's a bit of a special one because I'm meeting up with Liam, which is actually the winner of the April Brewers Cup in Singapore. So we traveled all the way from Hong Kong to compete in Singapore, and we're going to catch up now almost 1 year later to see what he's up to, how he's brewing coffee, and what is new. So come with me up and let's brew some coffee together.
Hey.
So we're on the inside and we're ready for the second video here from Hong Kong. And as you heard in the intro as well, it's a bit of a special one because we have a winner of the April Brewers Cup, actually in Singapore. Right?
Yes, in Singapore.
Do you maybe just want to tell people why you ended up in Singapore competing?
Well, first, I like the idea that you try to create a platform for people to attend in a competition, because I think it's important for baristas, for everyone to understand more about coffees. Mm-hmm. It's a really good platform, but at that moment I can't see that it's coming to Hong Kong very soon. That's why I want to grab the chance. That's why I just go all the way to Singapore.
That's awesome. I mean, which I really appreciate, and it's funny because also the winner here in Hong Kong lives in Korea.
Yes, right? I heard that.
So we still don't really have like a local Hong Kong champion, right? But I think that's one of the fun stuff with the competition, right? So I mean, obviously, this is someone that knows the April Brewer. I still remember the cup you brewed in Singapore as being really tasty. Then I told you which coffee to brew, and now you can obviously choose your own coffee, right?
Yeah.
So what coffee have you kind of chosen for us today?
Today, I've chose a few coffee for you. It's from a local roaster called Oma. Both of them are from Ethiopian Alto coffees. The single varietal, one is P berries, the other one is 74158.
Okay. Do you want to explain for those that don't know what a P berry is?
P berries is like cherry is like only one piece inside the cherry. So some people say it has more flavors compared to the rest. Yeah. But we'll see.
Do you agree with that?
We'll see.
We'll see. Okay.
We're
trying to see. Yeah. So basically, standard, coffee cherry has two seeds, right? So one smaller seed instead, which is basically kind of a mutation or an anomaly, more or less, is then basically giving a little bit more nutrition, energy, kind of. Yeah. That's the idea. Exciting. Okay. So you had an Anaerobic Natural process and then the wash run. Which one do you?
Let's start with the wash run.
Yeah, awesome. Let's do it.
Oh, and the other one is from Berlin, the barn. Yeah. One of the famous ones. It's Ethiopian one as well.
Yes. Awesome. Dambi Ublu, which I guess is also a single farmer project, maybe. I don't really know. It doesn't really say. That's funny. Natural mixed heirloom.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe it's a cooperative. That's cool. Do you prefer, so you have a washed, you have a natural, you have an anaerobic. What's your own kind of preference when it comes to different processing methods of Ethiopian coffee?
Personally, I like the traditional one, the washed one, the natural one. But I read a lot of news about Ethiopia. It's really hard to get a washed coffee recently. So I tend to get more natural and anaerobic natural recently. Yeah. But if there's a chance that I can get a wash one, I'll go for it.
You prefer that? Yeah, yes. Sure. I mean, there's, in Ethiopia in general, there's definitely some challenges just with water to begin with, right? So I can argue that natural processed coffees makes a lot of sense. So you don't use too much water when you process coffee. But also then when you use a wash processed coffee, more than often that is done by a cooperative or a larger kind of setup. Yeah. And that is bringing some challenges of its own, right? So a lot of the more traceable lots are actually natural processed coffees, right? Yeah. But that's cool. Let's see. Let's try. Yeah. So you mentioned now, we have a P berry, we have single varietal in terms of Ethiopian coffee as well. Would you brew it differently because it's a P berry?
Usually no. When I first have a new bag of coffee, I try to use a similar one. Yep. Same recipe to try to find out what's the coffee like. Yep. And I'll play around with it.
That's awesome. And the recipe you're doing now is kind of your starting, let's say, starting recipe.
Yeah.
So we actually have featured Oma before here in Hong Kong, actually, in the home brewing videos, right? So we know it's a loring roast already. I've been to the store now as well. When I did the previous video, I hadn't visited the store yet, but now I actually have. So we can confirm that it's definitely very light roasted, especially for being, I would say, Hong Kong, right?
Yes.
Not that Hong Kong is necessarily so dark in terms of roasting, but it is for sure like almost a Scandinavian like roast style, right? Yeah. Cool. Comandante grinder.
Comandante grinder, yes.
That's your go-to always?
Personally, I don't really use Comandante too much because I work in a coffee shop. I usually use the electrical one. I don't, it's much faster, much more consistent, I would say.
Sure, that's true.
But I use Comandante mainly because I think as a barista, I need to communicate with a lot of customers, which they are not baristas.
Yeah.
And I think most of them must have heard of Comandante, or they are using Comandante.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So that's why I can communicate, know what they're using. I can tell them what grind size I prefer, a more closer language with them. Yeah. So I think that's one of the barista's job to create a bridge the gap between us.
That's very true. That's very true. I mean, we're getting so many questions about click size on Comandante on these videos as well, right?
Yeah.
What are you on a click section?
29.
Is that a little bit coarser because it is a wash Ethiopian coffee?
Look, I usually tend to pre-grind it like 5 to 10 minutes or even longer. It depends on the roast date.
Yeah.
I think it's more consistent.
Yep.
Yeah.
Where are we actually on the roast date?
This one is actually quite new. It's
29th. So a week-ish, 10 days.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that usually what you aim for?
For the resting day, I'm usually looking for 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
That would be easier to more consistent.
Very cool. And we're looking for, let's say, flavors of jasmine, white peach, blood orange, and chamomile tea, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like a basic coffee.
I hope so. I hope so.
We'll see. So you did 15 grams of coffee.
This time is 14.
14 grams.
Adjusted a little bit compared to my recipe before.
Yeah. So we have a video together already, right? Where where you share the winning recipe in the April Brewers Cup, right? So if you haven't seen that, you should check that out also. But again, 14 grams on 29 clicks.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So just basic pre-wash the.
Yep. And it still always wins?
Yes. I mean, if you just smell the paper, I don't think you can smell too much, but if you smell the water, you will still have a little bit of the.
There's a little bit of everything, yeah, sure. I also, because I had here in Hong Kong, after the competition, I did some kind of coffee sharing sessions. And that kind of question came up in terms of rinsing and not rinsing. And one of the things I'm advocating for is also just making sure that the paper filter sits well in the brewer, right? So rinsing it makes it sit better if you're careful. So I think that's something that also really helps, right?
Yes.
Very Ethiopian,
yeah,
which makes sense. I mean, a little bit floral, a little bit citrusy.
Yeah.
Nice. We have been, I think here in Hong Kong, I've been around drinking a bit of coffee now, and washed coffees, there's kind of always one on the menu, but the predominant is anaerobics,
yes.
I would say. Yeah.
Yes, I would say so.
Yeah.
Yes, I think even though the barista likes the natural or the washed coffees. I think right now the market are looking for something anaerobic more. They tend to be looking for anaerobic coffee, something that stands out, in terms of flavor, stands out a little bit more.
Yeah.
When they have the sip of coffee, it's exactly like what the descriptor of the coffee bags.
Yeah.
That what makes them happy or enjoyable. For the natural wash coffee, it's a little bit difficult for them at the first try. So I wouldn't say it's not good for anaerobic coffees. Yeah. It's just, I would say it's just a start for them to get into the specialty coffees.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. That was an interesting one, and I mean, I think drinking, I had like some milk tea here or whatever other beverage you drink. It's intensity, right?
Yes.
Intensity.
They do like the intensity. Yeah. And I think in Asia, most people like the intensity.
Yeah.
If you go to like Thailand, if you went to Taiwan, the milk tea, the bubble tea, those kind of flavors, they have one similarity is the first taste comes out so strong.
It's very, very strong.
Yes. Yeah.
Very cool. So water temperature?
93.
93. And I remember from the Singapore competition that one of the things that kind of made you stand apart was the choice of water.
Yeah.
Have you changed anything now, or are you working somewhere?
I haven't changed too much.
Yeah.
Still using Aquacode. The BPM is around 70 to 80.
Yep.
But the recipe that I wanted, I used two temperatures. The first one is a little bit higher. The second pour is a little bit lower. Yeah. But usually, if I brew at home, at shop, it's a little bit too messy to do that.
No, okay, so you stick with one.
Yeah, I just stick with one.
Which it's
still very good coffee, I would say.
Okay, go for it.
And especially for like washed coffees, I think they need more energy. They need more.
A little bit more temperature, a little bit more agitation, maybe.
Yes, compared to the anaerobic one. So I wouldn't mind to use both higher temperatures.
Yeah. Okay. So now you started with 60 grams of water. Yeah. Circle pour, pretty much. Yeah.
And the second pour would be, I would like wait till around 40 to 50 seconds, and then I'll start the second pour. We'll go to 200.
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest difference in waiting in between that second pour? Like, let's say you wait for 20 seconds or 1 minute.
I think it depends on in terms of extraction, the longer I wait, the extraction goes up a little bit more. Yeah. If the shorter I wait, the extraction goes down a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. The line moved from a certain point to a center pour there. Well, what's the main reason for kind of finishing with that center pour?
I think in the first pour and the start of the second pour, the circle pour is enough agitations for me. So I go back to the center to have a more consistent water flow throughout the whole cups. So make sure I can, the water flow, the all time I'm looking for would be more consistent. Yeah.
And what is that total brew time that you're looking for?
Before 2 minutes, around 2 minutes. That's
okay. So quite quick.
Yeah. I think that leads to a little bit more clean, a gentle cup of coffee.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so we're basically finishing at 2 minutes, perfect more or less, and then all the water is going through, right? That's still something that I see, and I saw it a lot in the April Brewers Cup here in Hong Kong, where people do not let the water go through. They lift it off before, and that's still something I'm struggling with myself from a taste perspective. But I see it quite often.
Yeah.
Awesome. What do we think? What do you smell here in terms of aroma?
A little bit of floral, a little bit of citrus. I'm not too sure with the caramel, but I do smell a little bit like white floral. Yeah. That kind of stuff.
I think naming florals in coffee is always a bit of a challenge, right? It's easier to kind of categorize it in kind of a wider, you can say maybe some coffee blossom as well.
Yeah.
But it's hard to kind of get that intensity, right? overall very clean, very Ethiopian, right? And I think that's that's a good sign initially, right?
Yes.
And then we see how well that translates to the actual taste. So you're actually running with April cups.
Yes.
That's cool.
Because usually I have it for myself. I'll just go all the way with the whole cup.
Yeah, sure.
I think it's more user friendly for myself, I'd say.
Yeah, sure.
Especially at home, I don't use a small cup. Just keep pouring and drinking. I just finish the cup. Sit on
fill up the cup, and sit down and enjoy it.
Yeah, and do whatever I want.
I do the same. Yeah. I appreciate that.
And I actually like the design of the cup because in the competition I actually used the same cup for the competition.
Yeah.
And I think the design is easy to drink and it's not too thin.
I think it's so interesting, and I should probably put this on record as well because I've had a few times, and I remember this with your brew as well in Singapore, and I was a little bit confused because very often when I used Aquacode or I've tasted it from other people, I could taste this very clear kind of saltiness in the coffee. But for some reason, when you use it, I don't taste any saltiness.
I think it's the amount of Aquacode you're using. Okay. Myself and my colleagues, we try a lot of different ppm of Aquacode. Yeah. We actually try different kind of minerals. But I think for Aquacode, why we choose Aquacode is it's easier for like operation-wise.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get.
So you use it in the coffee shop?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. Because we noticed that sometimes, especially in Hong Kong, the water is actually fine.
It is, yeah. Yes. I've noticed that as well.
Yeah, I think as long as you have a normal filter for your home or for your coffee shops, the water comes out fine. Yeah. You don't actually need to do too much, and you can still brew a tasty cup of coffee.
Yeah, sure.
But for Aquacode, the reason we use Aquacode is we can communicate with people as well. People know what we're using, and I think that's important. Yeah. We are trying not to gatekeeping the secret of brewing the cup of coffee you are tasting. If you're coming to get a cup of coffee or you're trying to buy the bags of coffee from us, I actually want you to know how we brew it. We actually want you to use exactly what we use. Yeah. So you can replicate it.
Which I think makes a lot of sense, right? Yes. And Aquacode for them would be really easy to use that. Do you have any, because I sometimes feel when I'm mixing water myself that it can be a bit inconsistent because it doesn't always dissolve in the same way.
Yes.
Do you have any tips or tricks on how to kind of mix, and is there some kind of expiration date on the blend? Like, do you feel that after a few days it's not going to taste so good, or?
I would say try not to be too aggressive when you try to get coffee. Try to make the water out. Don't make like a whole 18 or 20 liters of water. Try to go small first.
Yeah. Okay.
Make sure you can make a small bottle. Try it out first.
Yeah, sure.
We usually, because in the coffee shop we use it quite fast, so the expiration is not really a big problem for me.
Yeah.
But I do taste a little bit different when I use it at home.
Yeah.
If you wait for like a week or more, it would taste a little bit different.
You would prefer it to be a bit fresher.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And the reason I think is like oxidization, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and especially with water opening or closing it, it's got to make a difference, right? As you say. Okay.
Yeah.
So what do we taste here? Like, what do we think?
I think it's really classic wash geisha, wash Ethiopian wash, like a little bit of floral, some citrus, stone fruit, kind of fruits. I do enjoy it a lot.
Absolutely, I think it's because I've personally been struggling with washed Ethiopian coffees from a quality perspective. I think that quality is just going down. This was actually one of the more, let's say, as you mentioned as well, like classic Ethiopian wash profiles. Yeah. Which I really appreciate because even now at April we don't actually work with one.
Yeah.
because we work with single farmers, and then it makes it even more complicated to find these really good wash logs. But this is actually really good. Technically 2 farmers. So I'm not sure if we could work with it, but which makes sense, right? There's no single farmer that has enough pea berry in Ethiopia to make like a sizable lot. I don't know if you know how big this lot of coffee is.
I can't confirm exactly how big it is, but yeah.
Can't be too big, right?
Yes.
But no, super tasty. I mean, I'm thinking we're standing here, and if you're up for it, you also have very fast brew times anyway.
Yeah.
Should we go through the anaerobic as well? Because I'm a little bit curious. You know, you guys know I don't drink so much of this myself, but I'll kind of want to see if there's any changes brewing-wise and approach-wise.
Okay.
Maybe, or something else. And I mean, why not? We're here, we can just try it, right?
Yeah.
Should we go for it?
Yeah.
Let's do it. So second coffee here is actually from, it's from the same producer. Probably the same varietal, but then this is without the pea berry centering. But it has gone through a 48-hour-long anaerobic process as a full natural, right? In this case, do you know when they say anaerobic, does that mean like plastic bucket?
Yeah.
So basically, they pick the cherries, they put it in a plastic bucket, and they put a lid on it, right? So it's kind of simplified. That's also an interesting one. So do you think that the water you're mixing Aquacode into has a big impact?
I do.
Yeah.
Because last time I went to Singapore, I struggled to find the local one.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I tried to find something that I can get in Singapore.
Yeah.
And the water comes out a little bit different. Even though I'm using the same ppm, same Aquacode, the taste is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Yeah. And the temperature drops a little bit lower to like 92, 91.
Okay, so you were up around, let's say, 93 before?
Yeah.
Ish. And
I think
check it down a little bit.
Yeah, for wash coffee, I tend to go a little bit high.
Okay, fair enough. Are we making any other changes?
In terms of the brewing structure, not so much. Yeah.
Grind size?
Grind size a little bit finer, because I find usually wash coffee, the drawdown time is a little bit slower.
Yeah.
So that's why you go pause a little bit for wash coffee.
Yeah.
But for those natural and Anaerobic natural, they usually have a faster one. So it's okay to use a finer one, I would say.
Yeah. How much finer are we talking? 1 click, 2 clicks, 3 clicks?
I think we can go 2 clicks.
2 clicks, okay. Yeah. Interesting, but basically overall when you brew it's like very minor adjustments actually, right?
Yes.
You're staying in a very similar kind of range.
Yes.
From a brewing perspective.
Yeah. And for natural coffee or some anaerobic coffees, for the ratios, I probably don't get too much sometimes. I would shorten the ratios. Because I find it sometimes if you go a little bit too much, the cleanliness of the coffee goes down.
Yeah. Especially
when the temperature drops. Mm-hmm. That's why I may, have a shortened brew.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That also makes sense, right? And we're looking at, because of the processing method, we're looking at quite different flavor expressions, right? Yes. So here we're looking at pineapple, mango, pomegranate candy, right? So I think one of the main differences between, let's say, anaerobic processed coffees and let's say traditional wash or even traditional natural is that you go from these kind of wash natural having fresh fruit flavors to these kind of anaerobic ones often having candied or dried or something else. So you move away a little bit from that kind of fresh coffee sensation, and you end up more in the kind of sometimes obviously artificial land, but definitely this kind of candy dried land, right?
Yes.
It's quite interesting, right? Given that it's basically the same. Obviously, it's a pea berry, so it's a bit different, right? But if you look at just at the two taste descriptors, you wouldn't necessarily guess it's the same producer, right? For the same farm. So quite interesting. Do you have any other recommendations in terms of, let's say, coffee brewers and stuff? I did notice you guys have the April brewer also. Like I saw it in the kind of fridge behind the bar.
Yeah.
But I guess you guys are brewing with a few different brewers in general. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think you just have to understand what you're using. For example, for April brewers, it's very consistent. I always joke around with my friends saying, if you are brewing a really bad cup of coffee, if you're using April brewing a bad cup of coffee, you will never get a good cup. Because it's really consistent. But because sometimes if you use something like conical one, sometimes you will have a very tasty cup of coffee with the same pour. Suddenly it comes out a little bit good, and the other one probably not too much. The consistency is different, I would say. So I mean, if you understand the April, it's a really consistent one. Like the Kalita from Japan, they have a very similar, the concept they're using is very similar. And once you understand what the brewer, the dripper is trying to bring out, then you can play around with it.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
And I like the consistency of April. Because as long as you find the right choices of the brewing methods, the coffee beans, the dosage, everything, if you're all set, you will always get a good cup of coffee.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I think that's true, and I think it really complements, let's say, I always say that it was the brewer intended to be used when you brew April coffees, right? That's really always what we've been trying to do. It's our own kind of little ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
But it translates also so well, I think, to Oma in this case because of the lighter roast, right?
Yeah.
So it really helps to get that kind of texture, balance, and body that sometimes when you roast a little bit lighter, you kind of lose some of that in relationship to a darker roast or a more developed roast. But at the same time, the amount of cleanliness you get, the amount of flavor transparency you get, and again, that kind of fresh fruit qualities you're getting is just so much more enjoyable, right? But I always recommend to consider, depending on the roast style of the coffee you're brewing, you should consider the brewer that you're using, right?
Yes.
Not saying that April can't brew a darker roasted coffee, for example, but it's definitely something worth thinking about, both in terms of pouring and dosing and brewing and temperatures and all of it, right?
Exactly. I mean, that's why you have to listen to the barista. Because they know their coffee beans. I mean, they should know their coffee beans.
They should know.
Yes, they should know. They should know about their coffee beans. Yeah. So what they recommend you should suit their coffee beans.
Yeah. Do we change the clicker?
Oh, I haven't. Yes. Two clicks.
2 clicks, easy. Have you tried many other hang grinders before?
Yes, I tried one. It's called One Set.
Yes, One Set Brussels.
Yeah, I think that's a very good one as well. But my personal preference is like the flat brew.
Yeah.
And more clean kind of coffee.
I would say so too, and there's a thing when you talk conical grinders, there's an issue with conical grinders because they have a bearing in the center, right, which the burrs are sitting on. And the issue with the bearing is that the bearing has a little bit of leeway.
Yeah.
So basically what happens is that the burrs always wiggle a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So they're not perfectly aligned. They're basically always changing. So from a consistency perspective, a conical is pretty much a nightmare.
Yes.
Always. Not saying you can't brew tasty coffee with it, of course you can. But there's a mechanical fact there, whereas again, that bearing is going to be moving, and with that, the burst is going to be moving as well. And that is then going to impact the grind result you think you're getting on that same mindset. Cool. A bit more aromatic as well, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say so too, and there's a thing when you
So I see you're always pouring very kind of gentle and like, let's say quite careful.
Yeah. For the first pour, I usually go a little bit gentle.
Yeah.
And the second pour, I usually go a little bit more aggressive.
Yep.
Because for the second pour, I usually want to shorten the percolation time.
Yeah.
I just want the water sit with the coffee.
Sure. Which I think also makes sense, right? And again, pouring is one of those things I stress a lot as being very important, right?
Yeah.
Pouring height, pouring speed, aggressive, not aggressive, it's gonna have a big impact on that quality in the end, right? So we did that 60 gram pour, and now we're going all the way up to 200 again, right? And you're almost always done with that last pour at 1 minute.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you have some kind of strategy with the amount of time you're pouring water, or is that just a bit of a random?
It's kind of a strategy because you can replicate it with a few more cups every time.
Yeah.
When the coffee shop gets a little bit busy, sometimes you need to brew a few cups of coffee at the same time.
At the same time. Okay.
And this pouring method, it's one of the easiest way to do a few cups.
To actually do a few cups. But that's so interesting, and that's something that came up a lot during the Brewers Cup in Hong Kong, but just in general, because often you were kind of the exception, but in a lot of the times when the competitors, they go from the first round when it's 1 cup to the final when it's 3 cups, and they just crash. Either one, because they haven't considered how well their recipe works for 3 cups, because it is a lot more difficult, right? And I usually say also in like the world championships, it's not often, and I take this with a pinch of salt, but it's not always the best recipe in the world.
Yes.
Because it's adapted for 3 coffees. So I would say it's the best recipe in the world for 3 coffees.
Yeah.
But you can maybe actually make it taste better if you just focus on 1 coffee.
Exactly.
Right? It's a bit of a difference.
But I do like to find how to create the best one in 3 cups. Because in the competition, I still want to try to find a brewing method that's is one of the best ones. I can do it in the coffee shop, I can do it at home, I can do it at the competitions. Yeah, that's the goal.
Is it fair to say that you started with finding that 3 cup recipe, and then you took that and brewed 1 cup, instead of starting with a 1 cup recipe that you made into a 3 cup recipe?
Yeah, you can say that.
Sense,
yeah, you can say that. It's like there's a constraint for you, and you work within that.
Yeah. Sure. It's the same with the kind of classic April recipes with the pouring structures and so on. They are very much based on multiple cups of coffee.
Yeah.
Always, right? So we don't really do an individual cup recipe. We always do it based on you're brewing 3 cups of coffee.
Yes.
Right? Always. Cool. So a lot more aromatic. A lot more kind of red fruit. Not overly funky.
Yeah. Compared.
Like fairly, like in the world of anaerobic coffees, fairly clean.
Yes.
In relationship to the coffee we had before, not so clean. Right?
Yes.
But in, let's say, that category of coffee, we have to acknowledge the fact that in all of these different categories, they are different qualities.
Yes.
Right? So even though I have a very clear preference among all the kind of categories that exist, you still have to acknowledge that within each category there's lesser or better versions.
Yeah.
True. For me, what happens is that this red fruit just becomes, we're talking almost like overripe, slightly mushy plum.
Yeah.
Fine too, like it just sticks a bit too far. Becomes a little bit kind of too whiny.
Too whiny.
Too little bit like unbalanced.
Yeah.
But like a good brew in the sense that you can clearly tell the aromas and the flavors of porcelain. I'm also surprised over how much, let's say, sweetness you get out of the coffee with these short brew times.
Yeah.
Because I usually always say that with the April brewer, I would always be above 2 minutes. I would touch 220, 240. I would stay below 3 minutes with a recipe like this, like within that kind of dose and ratio. But I think maybe again it's like your use of the Aquacode that really works with like that style of pouring, right? And I think it's really interesting because for me also when it comes to brewing, it's all about that system, right? So usually, again, I don't tell people to brew faster than 2 minutes because usually I don't think it's so tasty. But again, it's within a certain system, right? So if you switch up that pouring, you are dosing a little bit more coffee. We're up at 14. And again, using a different style of water from what I'm used to, then all of a sudden that can work, right?
Yes. I think as an individual, you have to build your own system, I would say. There's never gonna fit you or someone else, this system, or maybe yours, probably someone will be struggling with it. Because, for example, when I first tried the April drippers, the first recipe I use is similar to the conical one I use, and I struggle a lot.
Sure.
So you just have to find the best suits you and play around with it, I would say.
Yeah. No, for sure. What do we think flavor-wise?
I think it's a little bit more like tropical fruit, red fruit, that kind of tone.
100% very red.
Yes.
Right? Yes.
A little bit of like plum, a little bit of probably pomegranate candy.
Yeah. Pomegranate is maybe a little bit more acidic intensity, but the thing is I get the candy reference.
Yeah, that's why it's like, candy.
We have this in Sweden, we would call it like grandma caramels, like hard candy that your like grandma would give you, and it would be like purple and red. That tastes like this coffee. Very good, right? Just quite interesting. Awesome. I think it's a good spot to kind of wrap it up. So we did 2 different brews.
Yes.
We're gonna wash process peaberry, and then a natural anaerobic processed single Ethiopian varietal. I'm just gonna assume it's the same varietal, but it's a peaberry selection of it. Maybe. Kind of makes sense because it's the same producer. Just a quick kind of breakdown of the recipe. We used how much coffee?
Yeah, we use 14 grams of coffee. And the total brew water is 200. We break it into 2 pours. The first one is 60 mils of water. The second pour would be the rest of the water. And circular in the first pour, circular in the first half of the second pour, and move back to the center. Very, April brewing style.
Sure.
I mean, if it works, you don't have to change too much. I just play around with the ratios between the first 2 pours. But
it's coming out really nice. And then Comandate grinder, we're 29 clicks for the washed. 27 then for the anaerobic. And then we're doing an Aquacode ratio mix thing, which I'm sure we're gonna get from you and like publish somewhere so that people can mimic that kind of perfectly. I want to try to do that as well because I haven't done that. Awesome. It's been really nice to kind of reconnect since Singapore. It's been a while, and it's cool to be able to do it here in Hong Kong as well. So thank you so much for letting me come in the first place.
Thanks.
And thanks to you guys for watching. Make sure you comment, all of this. I'm sure you have a lot to say about Hong Kong coffee, different styles of roasting, brewing, you name it, all of it, right? So make sure you subscribe and do all of this. Patreon is where you get all the kind of behind the scenes material. And with that, we just want to say thank you again. And thank you to all of you.
Thanks.
We want to give a special thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. It's because of you that we are able to continue to make these videos. And we want you all to feel free to always come with suggestions and ideas on the content that you want to see, because we are doing this for you and because of you. Thank you from all of us here at April.